Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! All the better than Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Allsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for September the 3rd. I am your host, Keith Allsep. We've got a great show lined up today. Michael Sauls from Go Gamecocks and the State. He will be pinch hitting for Lulu Kesin, who was on a deadline this morning. So I know Michael was in Atlanta, so we're looking forward to talking Gamecock football and a little Gamecock women's basketball with him. And then we will be joined by Alex Jones from the BigSpur.com. We'll talk a little bit more about South Carolina's season opener with Virginia Tech. We'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and we'll talk a little bit of football recruiting as well as, just like Gordon Gekko, money never sleeps. Neither does recruiting. But first, let's dive into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a birthday or anniversary celebration. It's football season now. Maybe you want to set up a big watch party. You want Nana's Porch to drop off some food, or maybe for your tailgate. Whatever your catering needs, Nana's Porch is your go-to. You'll love it, I guarantee it. A note, Nana's Porch will not be shipping pimento cheese until next week due to something on Southern Foods end. That is the company that ships Nana's Porch pimento cheese, but support this Gamecock-owned and operated business next week before the Vanderbilt game, or go ahead and pre-order your pimento cheese this week straight from the website, nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. All you have to do is click on pimento cheese. It's affordably priced. You can get both great flavors, the smoky jalapeno and the regular flavor. Shipping is free of charge. Checkout is simple, safe, and secure. Nana's Porch, award-winning pimento cheese. You'll love it. I guarantee it. All right, so the Gamecocks this week ranked number 10 in the AP poll, number 11 in the coaches poll. I think Ferris Bueller, that coaches Arizona State, must have some buddies that voted them number 10. I mean, of the Big 12, I don't even know that they play college football. Gamecocks, of course, with a 24-11 season opening win over Virginia Tech in Atlanta. We'll be discussing plenty of that. You had, I believe it was 4 AP top 10 teams lose. Texas lost. Clemson lost. Notre Dame lost, and Alabama lost. Gamecocks are climbing up to number 10. Latest in the shoe wars, Penn State. Dude, James Franklin, I'm wearing your colors today. You're switching to Adidas. I mean, how can you be more plain than Penn State's uniform with Adidas? But at any rate, maybe that's more Nike money for the Gamecocks. A couple of sad notes. I must announce that the death of Arch Madness and the end of Arch Manning's Heisman Trophy campaign came crashing down like Wall Street in 1929 on Saturday afternoon at the Horseshoe. What a glorious celebration of Lee Corso. You know, folks, he's been doing college game day on ESPN since 1989. I've spent over half of my 61 years watching him and watching Dickie V do men's basketball on ESPN. And what a way to go out. He picks the Buckeyes, the side of his first headgear pick. He picks Florida State as his super dog. They take down Alabama. He picked LSU to beat Clemson. What a great day for Lee Corso. Also, after North Carolina's 48-14 shellacking, I'm told Jordan Hudson has announced her intentions to enter the transfer portal after she watched Bill Belichick trot off the field with his D cups and his cutoff short sleeve hoodie. Hey, congrats to my guy, Mike Yuva, formerly of Fox 57 and Gamecock Central. He's joining Chance Miller at Coastal Carolina as Associate Athletic Director for Media Relations. Couldn't be happier for Mike. Great guy and a great friend to the show since 2019 when I took it over when CBS Sports forced JC Sherbert out. So, hey, if you're a Gamecock fan, you got to be loving it. Gamecocks win. Clemson loses. And Brian Kelly absolutely pantsed Dabo when Dabo gave Clemson a 58 grade and gave LSU a 65 grade. And he was like, well, maybe if he didn't watch the game, he would understand that at LSU, we dominated that game. And quite frankly, they did dominate the second half of that game. And had they not had the touchdown overturned, it could have been much worse. That was the Gamecocks' first win since 1968. And we'll bring in Michael Sauls, who's wearing his Atlanta Braves cap. Michael, thanks for being with us. I'm a lifelong Braves fan. I got to see, I'm so old, I got to see Hank Aaron and Dusty Baker play together.
Wow.
Atlanta Braves as a kid. And so you were at the game on Saturday in Atlanta. Your thoughts on just that venue? What a magnificent stadium. I thought easy to get there. So everybody listening probably knows, but so I got up at 5:15 Sunday morning, went to the airport and took a direct flight from Austin to Atlanta, met my best friend from college, Chris Lee, at the B concourse at gate 10, and we took MARTA, changed one time, got off right across the street from the stadium, easy, in and out, went after the game, did the same thing. But what a great venue, easy to get in and out of. And, of course, it was much better because that was the Gamecocks' first win in Atlanta since 1968.
Yeah. To your point.
In your dad's eyes at that point in time.
Yeah, to your point, that was a phenomenal venue. I'd never been to Mercedes-Benz. The only pro stadiums I was in Jacksonville for the Gator Bowl in 2022 or 2023, whatever year that was. I've been to the Commander Stadium. I've been to the Ravens Stadium. But Mercedes-Benz was great. Obviously, it was packed out with South Carolina fans and Virginia Tech fans, to their credit. It was really good venue, obviously from a working, like a work perspective. Like the press box was great. It wasn't hard to get lost, which is nice. Anytime you're at a new stadium, I feel like you run the risk of getting lost while you're trying to work. But yeah, great game, obviously. Great game, great start to the season, and we'll see how they can stack it this week with SC State.
All right, so how does the food that they set out for the media guys and gals, how does that compare to other venues that you've been?
So I think the best I've ever had was, now I think about it, the Mayo Bowl during Beamer's first year was up in Charlotte. They had like a waffle bar for us in the morning, which was pretty cool. But I think this one probably takes the cake. Like we had like salad, like 2 different kinds of pasta for the pregame meal, and then the halftime snack was like little hamburger sliders. And then they had like a full-blown ice cream machine running the entire time, water and drinks and etc. So yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
All right, so let's dive in. So Lulu Kesin, she tweeted out, I saw it at halftime, right before halftime, when I went to the restroom and concessions, that after the last 24 hours, the Saturday night Clemson LSU game, and then the first half when Nick Harbor's touchdown catch was overturned, she didn't know what a catch was. I saw another tweet saying, "Congratulations, college football, for becoming just like the NFL, to where you slow it down 10 times slower than slow motion, to where anytime a ball moves, that makes it look like the ball has moved for eternity." Michael, what is a catch and what is not a catch? Because I watched those 2 catches, and then I watched Kyron Lacey's catch on the sideline against South Carolina last year, to where as soon as he goes to the ground, he puts his hand down and the ball pops out. And they said, oh, he made a football move. Well, I thought Nick Harbor caught it, turned, secured the ball, which is a football move. So did the LSU wide receiver, yet those got overturned. College football is going down a really murky path here with what is and what is not a catch. And I mean, you took a touchdown pass and a catch away from Lenora Sellers and Nick Harbor, not to mention the fact Lenora Sellers had 3 other passes dropped, and the one that Donovan Murph dropped at midfield, if he caught that, he might have raced 50 yards into the end zone from where he caught it, because nobody was around him. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a catch. In the moment, you know, when I saw him hit the ground and the ball popped out, I was like, oh, okay, like, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten to a point where we're overanalyzing maybe is the problem. You know, I don't see how you can say, I mean, he caught it, had control, took 2 steps when you don't need 2 steps in college football, and then was out of bounds and still had control. And then as he went to the ground, you know, it got punched out. But I mean, thankfully they didn't need it. it's one of those things where I feel like if you had lost that game, we would have heard, Beamer and Harbor and probably even Sellers in the post game, talk about it a lot more than they did. Granted, they went on to score again, so they didn't need it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can sit here and say that wasn't a catch, but I'm not a Big 12 official, and I don't get paid to make those decisions.
Yeah, the Big 12 officials the Gamecocks have had in their last two games have been less than stellar because they're not used to teams huddling and subbing. They're used to NASCAR, which is hurry up football. But then I actually saw when that guy, the white hat, I had a lot of respect for him and his crew, but I mean, I know it went up to the replay booth. I don't know who was in charge of the replay, but, the LSU Clemson game, that one could have mattered because that was a tie game at the time and overturned a touchdown for LSU. But Clemson, in their last three regular season games against SEC opponents, are averaging 9 points per game. Georgia, South Carolina, LSU, Texas still they are an SEC team, but they still have lingering effects from the Big 12. I mean, let's face it. Last year, the Texas quarterback, the only clutch play he made is Quinn Ewers. His entire career was against another Big 12 team, Arizona State. And I announced it right before you came on, but RIP Arch Madness and the guy that trademarked that, he wasted a lot of money. And Michael, I'm in my car every day, all day long, and all I've heard for a month, every hour on 84 college football radio is Arch Manning this, Arch Manning that, Cade Klubnik this, Cade Klubnik that. And when they have to play Arch Manning, first start on the road at Ohio State, I get it, but he went from the Heisman frontrunner to now the 9th best odds, and Klubnik, his odds dropped, and now the top two odds to win the Heisman Trophy are Garrett Nussmeier and Lenora Sellers, and they'll be on October the 11th in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I think I'll hit on Arch and Cade first. I think with Arch Manning, I think the hype was to a certain level probably not founded. I think, yes, a lot of the hype was around his last name and everything, and he probably is not, the second coming of Jesus Christ that we've all made him out to be. But it was his third start ever. His third start is coming on the road at Ohio State. So I personally was not expecting him to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdown passes. I didn't expect him to look as kind of skittish or rusty as he did, but I kind of thought he would look not phenomenal. So I'm not totally jumping off the Arch Manning is going to be really good train. I think give him a couple weeks to get his full, his legs in him, and then we'll see what happens there. With Cade, I am surprised seems to have very little consistent success against non-conference teams. It's one of those things where, I mean, this is year 4 for him as a starter. I think you would expect a guy who's been leading a perennial contender to be a little bit better in non-conference situations. But with Lenoris and Nuss, I think that the fact that those two are continuing to play well and lead their teams to wins week after week after week, and the fact that Lenoris jumped, like you said, in the Heisman odds, I think that game in Baton Rouge is going to be phenomenal. And, if everything goes according to plan for both schools, I mean, they'll both be undefeated walking into that. And I would imagine that is if both teams just keep winning, they're going to keep getting ranked higher and higher. So we might have a top 5 matchup in game day in Baton Rouge. So that could be pretty cool, but don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt there is a trip to Columbia, Missouri, where South Carolina has not won since the Muschamp year, where they went, I think, maybe 2017. Yeah, 2017, I was there. Hayden Hurst, well, it's actually Debo Samuel. Debo ran the kickoff. Well, Jam Williams got an interception. They ran a jet sweep to Debo for a touchdown. And before that, he ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. So, and Hayden Hurst got in the parade with a tight end around Kurt Roper for a touchdown. And Gamecocks won that one. But if the Gamecocks can win that one, not slip up at home against Vanderbilt, I don't even know if Vanderbilt's players, it seems like they may all be in court. I mean, now there's like 5 Vanderbilt players suing the NCAA. I don't know what's going on with that one. Maybe they'll get a stay to be at Williams-Brice Stadium in a couple of weeks. But to end the weekend, all I heard all month long, Bill Belichick, their schedule's really easy. They could very well be undefeated when they face Clemson. Then I'm watching the game and following on Twitter, North Carolina goes down and scores, and some national expert said, "Did you really believe Bill Belichick was going to lose to Sonny Dykes?" Well, that was a tweet that did not age well. North Carolina goes down 48-14. It looked like the Keystone Cops. And as a matter of fact, breaking news, Jordan Hudson has announced her intention to enter the transfer portal this morning.
Yeah, I was shocked at that game. I got so bored in the second half that I just started reading a book. I muted the game and laid down on my couch and started reading. I was not shocked that they lost. I kind of figured week 1, Sonny Dykes and TCU aren't a bad football team. Like, this is not a week 1 cupcake game. So I kind of figured TCU would win, and I kind of figured it'd be kind of a close game, but I will admit I was extremely shocked that they got blown out at home to start the season. I was not expecting that at all. I'm not totally ready to say, this experiment's not going to work. Like, give me 2 more weeks, and then maybe I'll get to that point where I'm going, all right, this was a fun 1-year experiment. Now you're going to have to deal with the weird situation where you're giving the team to his son, and his son might not even be a better head coach. So you're kind of in this weird purgatory for a couple of years. But I don't know. That was definitely a shocking loss. And I wouldn't be too terribly surprised if there are a couple more like that this season for North Carolina.
Yeah, I think they could. There could be several more like that. And I mean, it was kind of shocking. Like, I really didn't think they would win, but I didn't think they would just be so inept, really, in all 3 phases of the game. But Bill Belichick really has not been a winner other than when he had Tom Brady. And even when they were winning big, Bill Belichick was just the head football coach. He was not in charge of personnel decisions. He was not the general manager. When he became the general manager, that's when Tom Brady kept saying, "Hey, Bill, I'll take less money. Go get me some playmakers," because all the guys had left. Randy Moss had left. Of course, Gronk had his injury issues. They let Richard Seymour walk, and a lot of the all-time defensive guys. And he didn't draft well. He didn't evaluate well. Now they have 72 new players on the roster at North Carolina. Rich Rod, the same thing at West Virginia. I don't know. I mean, if it keeps going like this, I don't even know if Belichick will make it through the year. And I know they wrote that in his contract, but I just can't see if this goes really south. I can't see North Carolina honoring that. They're going to have to get somebody that can try to fix that program, especially if they want to move into the Southeastern Conference in the next realignment. You can't afford to have Bill's son, because that's all we know him as, Bill Belichick's son, running your football team. But at least he is closer to Jordan Hudson's age than Bill Belichick. That's for damn sure.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
All right, so let's talk about some of the more surprising things. Like, I thought South Carolina special teams operated like a veteran unit. I was extremely concerned that William Joyce, who's from Spartanburg High School and who's never punted or kicked in a game, and then you had Virginia Tech's kicker, who's also from Spartanburg High School, who hit a 56-yard field goal in a bowl game. And I was wondering, how come we didn't tamper with that guy and get him to transfer in the transfer portal and give him $1 million? And then, of course, he hits another 56-yard field goal against the Gamecocks to end the half. But William Joyce, money on his extra points, a short field goal he made after the Nick Harbor touchdown gets overturned. I said it'd be better to just score touchdowns and instead of kicking field goals, but he made it. Max Kelly, a true freshman, kicking off. He kicked off well. The coverage units, Virginia Tech, they had plenty of opportunities to run it out. They never got to the 25-yard line. Most of the time they were tackled inside the 20. And then Mason Love, 5 punts, 47.8 yards per average, and pinned them inside the 20 3 times. Cole Rasmussen, a first-time snapper. Shout out to Nick Harbor for knocking that guy in the middle of next week, covering a punt. I just thought Beamer ball at its best, and what better game to have it, flawless special teams, than against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I think coming into the opener, I think obviously there were a lot of question marks around how the punters and the kicker and the kickoff specialists were going to perform, because I mean you're replacing everybody. But I mean, I think those three guys and Mason and Joyce and Kelly just kind of proved like, hey, like, we're good. Everybody calm down. It's going to be fine. Granted, it is week 1, so maybe even that's an overreaction, and there's still time for these young guys to, kind of go through some growing pains. But I think the way that they performed in week 1, that's exactly what you wanted to see. And then beyond, the specialists themselves, to your point, Nick Harbor's tackle on punt coverage, that is exactly what you want to see. I mean, out of a dude who is a star wide receiver running down there to take somebody's head off. Vakari Swain's punt return, obviously, like that is what you want from a punt return unit, especially when your offense is kind of sputtering and not getting a lot done in the present moment. Obviously, they went on to have, a big play later, but the offense was kind of sputtering a little bit, and you need something to spark any kind of momentum. The defense been playing well all day, but you needed something to fully light it back up. And Vakari Swain's punt return was exactly what they needed, kind of gave them their juice back, and obviously they scored the next drive. So, I think special teams would probably get an A+ for me just based off of how they performed in week 1. Now the question will be, can they continue to stack it, and when those younger specialists go through those inevitable growing pains that they're going to go through at some point this season, how will they be able to respond, and how will it affect, South Carolina as a whole?
So I got to say, Bakari Swain, what an electric punt return. I was in in Columbia in 2012 when Ace Sanders took that punt return back 70 yards. The top was blown off Williams-Brice Stadium. That made it 21-0. It's still in the first quarter. And I was in Tampa for the hit. I remember more the hit, the sequence, right? You had the fake punt by Michigan, which did not result in a first down, but they gave them the first down anyway. Yep. Spurrier jumping up on the sideline, pointing down. Then Clowney makes the hit. I thought the guy's head flew off in the helmet. He hit him so hard. But then the next play, Spurrier on a sudden change of possession, he always went deep. Ace Sanders in the back of the end zone, touchdown. But he had a 63-yard punt return for a touchdown in that game. Those were the last ones. And until this one, which I thought was even more electric. And Michael, going back to high school, I thought Bakari Swain was a wide receiver. He was a prolific wide receiver. Everybody else recruited him to be a wide receiver. Quite frankly, I thought the last 2 years he probably would have been South Carolina's best wide receiver. But he really showed some great ball skills. And I'm not saying he's like the dude from Colorado, but man, he probably needs the ball in his hands 3 or 4 times a game after seeing that.
Yeah, he played really well, obviously, on special teams. I think, first off, that's insane that the last punt return was that bowl game in 2013. I mean, that's 12 years in between punt returns for a touchdown, which I feel like is abnormally long. I feel like typically it's like 3 to 4 on average. I'd have to look at that. But no, I mean, Bakari obviously played great on special teams. He was able to bounce back after muffling that punt early. But he even on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Kilgore went down and he had to come in for a little bit. And he played great on defense. So I think it was an all-around good game from Bakari, and that's something that you want out of a younger guy early in the season, kind of throwing him into the fire, kind of just like, hey, like, can we count on you? Can we trust you? And I think he went out and proved that as of right now, South Carolina can rely on him if they need him to.
So Nick Harbor gave up track to focus on football on the opening drive. They hit him on the RPO on the slant for 20 yards and a first down. He makes that play on the punt team. He did have a drop on a crossing route. I would have liked to seen how many yards after the catch he would have had on that one with that world-class speed. But then the Gamecocks go to the full house backfield look where they had either run the ball every single time or they had just dumped it to the tight end coming across like a H-back after faking to the running back. And that's the beauty of running plays to set up another play, because as soon as the ball was snapped, that Virginia Tech safety, he sprinted up into the box. And when he saw Lenore Sellers drop back, he tried to slam on the brakes. It was too late. Nick Harbor over the top. He had that guy beat so much. I'm sure you could see it. Nick had him beat by like 10 yards and slowed down and just caught it right in stride and ran in untouched for the touchdown. That was the dagger. But just how happy is Gamecock Nation? And I'm just so happy for Nick Harbor, who now is playing like a 5-star football player instead of a 5-star athlete who was a track guy. He's playing like a football player now.
Yeah, I think that touchdown catch towards the end of the game was kind of what every South Carolina fan has been waiting for. I mean, to your point, I mean, here's this 6'5", 2 whatever 5-star athlete who is just oozing with big play potential. And up until, Sunday, those have kind of come few and far in between. So I think they finally got what they were expecting out of him with that play, and it was a beautiful ball from Lenoris. Obviously, he beat him on the route. It was very impressive, and I think they mentioned that at the post game. He went out for the fans. So I imagine getting him early will be huge. And I wouldn't if we see a deep shot to Nick Harper at least once a game for the rest of the season.
And you know what? I think they run him deep more than that. And just now, the fact that he can beat you and he can go deep, that just opens up the middle of the field and underneath and crossing routes for everybody else. So Gamecocks did win. Defense, special teams, stellar. Mike Shula, great opening drive. It just set the tone, and the defense played great. So this was the Aflac Kickoff Classic. Dawn Staley and Mike Krzyzewski are the Aflac commercial people. So Dawn Staley certainly supports football. She's helped recruit players for Shane Beamer to come to South Carolina. Shane Beamer helped with Joyce Edwards. So not a surprise to see her at the game. And so, next month, women's basketball will be getting underway. Just what are your general thoughts on the team? Ashlyn Watkins taking the year off, but Malaysia Fulwiley in Baton Rouge, but South Carolina gets Tanaya Latson, the leading scorer in the country. I think that is a net gain, quite frankly. And they add Medina Okot, 6'6" from Mississippi State, who I thought was underutilized. And look, you had Asia Wilson, and then you had Aaliyah Boston, and then you had Camilla Cardoso. When Dawn Staley has a big post that can catch the ball, that's just going to open it up for everybody else. I think this is going to be a huge year for Tessa Johnson as well. Give me your thoughts a month ahead of South Carolina women's basketball season getting underway.
Yeah, it's crazy. We just started football, and I'm already excited. I think the last in that is obviously led the country in points per game last year. Phenomenal playmaker. I get to see how her and Ray kind of are. If that duo can translate from all the way back in high school to college now. I think it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the whole year of no Ashlyn Watkins. They were able to push through and make it to a national title game with half a season. But I'm curious what they do rotation-wise to kind of fill those minutes. I think everyone kind of assumes he's going to get in the back half of the season. I'm waiting to see if Tessa Johnson takes a big jump in her junior year. I think that'll be interesting. I think beyond kind of this season, the roster makeup will be interesting. You're going to lose some talented players after the season. That's going to leave a lot of younger people with a bigger jump in their junior year. Like I'm adding a Daniel 2 years from now, or the two freshman wings who are coming in 2 years from now. So not even to get way too far ahead of myself, but I'm very interested to see how this year and how those younger players play. They're probably going to have a bigger role in the year after that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Maddie McDaniel. I think she is the next big-time point guard at South Carolina. Isla McDowell and Agot McKeer coming in on the wings. If you have Tania Latson and Tessa Johnson playing at their best with Medina Ocott. You know Joyce Edwards is going to get better. You know Chloe Kitts has been in the lab. Adele Tack, I think we can expect more from her. Raven Johnson, I think her and Tania Latson, they have that connection. And I think that motivates Raven to be in the gym, because I think she went on a victory tour after the 38-0 national championship season. And even though Staley admitted she was not in the gym like she should have been, it showed early in the season. But I think this team, quite frankly, will be better than last year's team. Now, what does that mean? We don't know, because all it takes is one bad game. And certainly South Carolina had, you know, and credit to UConn for making shots. South Carolina could not make shots, but I think Tessa Johnson, her upside, offensively in particular, is through the ceiling, where Breezy Hall just could not get past being a role player. Tessa Johnson, she's used to scoring a lot of points. And matter of fact, she led South Carolina in scoring in the Elite Eight and the national championship game as a freshman. And then, boy, Joyce Edwards, I'm really excited to see what she looks like this season. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm expecting Joyce to take another step up. Interested to see what a starting like. I know historically, like Joyce is playing more than anybody from off the bench. So like the starting lineup doesn't necessarily matter a whole lot. But I'm interested to see who is going to be, I guess, the third goal. Which I kind of assume it's going to be Raven and Tania and probably Tessa. But then do you go Joyce and Chloe to round out the lineup? Or do you have somebody to the bench? You have Medina Ocott in the so I think from a line, it'll be really interesting to see how Dawn does the things. But yeah, no, I think this team on paper has a, like you said, just as good, better than the team last year. And we're still a month out from the first preseason game, so things could change dramatically, or we could get to October 30th and figure out, hey, this team is nowhere near as good. But I think it'll be interesting to see just how big of an impact Latson has, because I think a lot of people pointed this out last year. South Carolina was missing like a go-to bucket getter in time, and I think Tania Latson can absolutely be that person for this team. So I'll be intrigued when we see that happen for the first time. If that makes sense.
I'm really excited to see Tania Latson and Joyce Edwards or Chloe Kitts in pick and roll or pick and pop action. It's pick your poison with that. Michael, great stuff. Look forward to having you on as a regular this year. Appreciate you pinch hitting this morning for Lulu, and great stuff as always. Love to see that Braves cap. And we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road, my friend. Be well.
All righty. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. That was Michael Sauls from Go Gamecocks and the State. And now we welcome back in to the program the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones from thebigspur.com. And Alex, fresh off a trip to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, just your thoughts on the venue and on the experience of Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to be back with you. I thought that was my first time being in that stadium, and that's a pretty awesome atmosphere and stadium. Like I think it's getting to about 10 years old, 15 years old, or something like that. But it kind of felt it was still brand new. It was even the outside atmosphere. They had like the Home Depot backyard thing, kind of felt like a Gamecock Park type of thing. So I just thought, from that perspective, it was really cool. But then, the atmosphere inside the game, it was obviously a big South Carolina crowd. I'd say 65-35, maybe a little bit more than that. South Carolina to Virginia Tech ratio, and you could tell when South Carolina did something really good in that game. That was for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's about right. 65-35, that seemed about right. But, I mean, it was hard to tell until the end of the game, and they were getting ready to set up the stage for the trophy presentation, and Shane Beamer's got the leather helmet on. I think Frank Beamer had it on, Lenore Sellers had it on, and Shane all had it on. But Gamecock Nation showed out, and shout out to Virginia Tech. And so I kind of broke it down in the good, which there was a lot of good. The bad to me is the injuries, which is where I want to start. Judge Collier goes out. Thankfully, it's not, the MRI was clean, no torn ligament. He's listed as a starter. I think we all know he's not playing maybe until Kentucky or LSU. Hopefully he should be back by then.
Yeah.
But you lost JT Gear, and I thought that was a big injury because he was playing well, and LSU Virginia Tech really picked on Brian Thomas on first down. They ran outside to whichever side he was on almost every single time. At first he was on the right side, so they ran to the right side. Then they flipped him and Dylan Stewart, and then they ran to the left side. I was impressed with the number of defensive tackles South Carolina played. None of them got injured, but you do have the injury to Collier. But, man, Brandon Cisse, he was everywhere. Bakari Swain, Miles Norwood, who played a lot of snaps, and even DeMarcus Leach, who I thought acquitted himself pretty good. But just like every other Gamecock cornerback, he didn't get his head around on those 50-50 balls. Virginia Tech, they had some drops, but they made 3 or 4 incredible, tough catches on 50-50 balls. Where are we on injuries? Because no Shedrick Surratt, no Jared Brown, and Michael Smith barely played. And I still don't understand why Jordan Dingle is playing more than Maurice Brown, quite frankly. But I'm not going to question Sean Elliott. But, man, Maurice Brown, he doesn't have to hold because he just knocks the crap out of guys. I mean, he is a violent football player. He lives for knocking the crap out of somebody. And he got the first play of the season on the little dump off there and bowled right over a guy. But just your thoughts on the injuries.
Yeah, starting with Judge Collier, that was a tough one just because, it's tough for him because I think everybody kind of saw that from a physical standpoint, like he was ready to take that next step in his game. But they do have depth there, which is one of the good things about that. Obviously not a good thing that Collier was injured, but you saw Miles Norwood immediately come in there. Bakari Swain was a guy that we talked about could have easily been a starter this year. And then also DeMarcus Leach, he was in on that one play and didn't get his head around on that one play, but that shows a lot of trust to have them to go ahead and throw him in there. So from a depth standpoint, I think they're okay there. They got those 3 guys, and they're going to do some other things to kind of cover up for Collier's injury. But it is good that it sounds like the MRI didn't come back showing anything too serious or further serious. So we'll see how long he's going to be out. With Shed Surratt, it kind of sounded like he may have been close throughout the game week last week, so maybe he's back this week, and we'll see if they insert him at that left guard spot or if he gets in there at some point. And then with JT Gear, like I think I said it on here before, like, when George Wilson went down with the injury, like, it was imperative that Stewart, JT Gear, Dez, those guys stay healthy, and we're down one more. And I don't think we know how long Gear is going to be out for. I don't think he's going to play this week. But now you're probably going to need to get a guy like Anthony Addison ready to go, because you're going to want to rotate some of those guys. You want to keep Dylan Stewart healthy, fresh for the fourth quarter. Brian Thomas healthy for the fourth quarter. So I think you're going to need to get some guys like Anthony Addison, Clay Dodd ready, and maybe even see what you can get from Damon Clowney as well. So the injuries are a little concerning, especially that edge spot. But for some of those guys, maybe it's not going to be too long that they're out. From that tight end spot too, Maurice Brown, I think they love that guy. I think Sean Elliott loves it. It seems like a Sean Elliott type of guy, just a physical player. He gets in there and blocks. You saw it on that first play. He's getting downhill quickly. He's explosive. Now I feel like you'll probably see Michael Smith a little bit more in South Carolina State moving forward, and then Jared Brown's another one too that seemed like kind of that same thing with Seth. That maybe had something he was doing with injury-wise, and maybe been close to playing in that game. So I think you could see him a little bit more Saturday and moving forward.
All right, so to me, the most surprising thing was how smoothly special teams operated, and it looked like a veteran special teams unit, and yet none of those guys had never done anything that they had to do in an actual game. Mason Love, 5 punts, almost 48 yards per punt. He was fortunate that the game was on turf. He got some kind rolls on his first couple punts. He had some nerves, I thought, then settled in and boomed a couple. Max Kelly on the kickoffs, and shout out to the coverage teams. Punt team, they almost blocked one or two. Gutsy call by Shane Beamer to take the 5-yard penalty from the previous spot instead of tacking it on that first punt. And then tremendous job by Bakari Swain, who was electric, but the punt team, they set up the return, and I got a shout out to Aaron Colasurdo, a 5th-year walk-on linebacker from Chapman High School, which is where my first college roommate was a star player. Wade Hampton Smith III and his brother Wayne Smith, they both ran track at Carolina. He just stands there with his arms up and doesn't block the guy, and the guy runs into him and falls down. But great individual effort, and the longest punt return by a Gamecock since 1970, when Dickie Harris took one back 97 yards against the Tar Heels. We'll have more on them in just a little bit. But 80 yards. I mean, I was in Columbia in 2012 from when Ace Sanders took the top off of Williams-Brice Stadium with that 70-yard punt return. He had the 63-yarder in the Outback Bowl. That was the last punt return for touchdown until Bakari Swain. I mean, I got to say, and Alex, you know this because you're a recruiting guy, Bakari Swain was a prolific high school wide receiver. Quite frankly, he could have been South Carolina's best wide receiver as a true freshman and last year if he played as a sophomore. But as good as he looks, as explosive as he is with the ball in his hands, is it crazy to think that maybe he needs to have a limited package on offense? Could we see that? I mean, what a play. Good Lord.
Yeah, that was just an incredible individual effort by Swain. Just because, for one, he had the bobbled fumble or punt return earlier in the game, so he kind of kept his confidence and good on Shane Beater and those guys to continue to be confident in him to go do that. But then just an incredible individual effort. And to your point, there was a lot of discipline on that punt return too, because there were a lot of opportunities for blocking the backs or guys to make big hits on guys. I just think both coaches actually talked about it after the game. When you have a punt, there's nothing ever good happens after a weeknight, because you're from Virginia Tech standpoint, your punt team having to run down the field, run back, and then run back down the field again. So just an incredible effort. And Swain, I think you'll probably see a whole lot more of him at punt return now. Because Kilgore, I think can do it too. He's maybe more like a safe return type of guy. But Swain, you mentioned with his high school highlights, he was pretty electric stuff that he had. He can do it all offensively, defensively, and punt return. I think he even did some kick return in high school too. But just an incredible effort. That's really kind of the play that when that happened, the switch kind of flipped for South Carolina's offense as well. He kind of felt at that point, all the momentum South Carolina. Because at that point, Virginia Tech had some momentum. They couldn't really get the ball moving too much, but they had some momentum defensively, especially. But you just felt the momentum completely switched. The stadium was very electric at that point. And at that point, you kind of felt pretty good about South Carolina's chances before the Nick Harper bomb.
Yeah, I mean, so the Gamecocks defense was on the field a lot. I mean, probably one of the most meaningless stats is time of possession. Virginia Tech had the ball, I think, 34 minutes, and South Carolina had it about 26 minutes. But it's tough for the Gamecock defense, right? Like, they're out on the field, they get a stop, then Swain gets a touchdown. So he's gassed. He has to get a blow. So DeMarcus Leach goes out there. Virginia Tech, they picked on him. He was in good position, but I think Shane Beamer certainly lamented the point, and I'm sure Torian Gray, a big teaching point this week is when you're in phase with the wide receiver on those 50-50 balls, you got to get your head around to make a play on the ball. Leach certainly was not the only one guilty of that. And by the way, Virginia Tech, shout out to them, because had it not been for those 3 or 4 just big-time catches, they would have never even been in the ball game, despite just what an anemic performance from South Carolina's offensive line. And whoever thought Rodney Newsom should have been in the starting lineup? I think he needs to have some responsibilities taken away. That may have been the worst offensive lineman performance since Gurminder thinned. Googe thought it was a good idea to put 2 Canadians in the game, and that didn't last long at Mississippi State. But Rodney Newsom, I don't want to see him again this year unless it's a blowout. And putting Marquis Anderson in the second half, even though South Carolina didn't have as many plays, I thought really kind of solidified a little bit, but it was not. And once again, not a stellar performance by South Carolina offensive line, which, by the way, Kason Henry, Josiah Thompson, Trevon Ball, even Boaz Stanley's played a lot of football. Rodney Newsom, a lot of football, albeit at Western Kentucky. And I don't know if that's a credit to Virginia Tech for confusing South Carolina's front, but man, they got to get that thing right. And as bad as it was, why wasn't Tree Babalade trotting out onto the field at some point? I don't understand.
Yeah, from that standpoint, it's going to be interesting to see what things look like from a starting standpoint this week against South Carolina State. Do they find a way to put a Tree in there? Surratt's healthy. Do they put him in there that left guard spot? I thought when Marquis Anderson got in there, he kind of had his ups and downs from a pass blocking standpoint, but I think PFF actually graded him pretty well from a run game standpoint. So you did like to see that, and I thought Trevon Ball, had a pretty good game overall. So I think you could really see the work he put in the offseason. And I thought, I think Casey Henry graded out. I don't have the PFF grades in front of me. I think he graded out pretty well too. So yeah, I liked when Marquis got in there. That was basically the only type of rotation they did throughout the whole game on the offensive line. And if Shed Surratt can't go this weekend, not even saying that he would indeed be the starter if he would go, but I think you'll see Marquis Anderson out there. But then the key will be whether they do any other rotating in there at certain spots. Like, I think you feel good about Boaz Staley. Like, he's going to be fine in there at center. Just, do they do any other type of rotating in there?
Yeah, honestly, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if Shed Surratt was in at left guard and Marquis Anderson was at center. Boaz Stanley, I thought obviously there were no bad snaps, but he kind of looked overwhelmed. Look, I get it. It's the first game. There's no exhibition game. There's no spring game. But Josiah Thompson, like PFF, his pass protection grade was in the 30s. Rodney Newsom may have had the worst offensive line grade in the history of South Carolina football from PFF. Lonnie Teasley, he's a great recruiter, but if South Carolina wants to get the college football playoff, and right now they're number 10, number 11 in the country, you got to get that offensive line right before you go to Columbia, Missouri, and before you go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, because if you can run the table, and I know as a coach you take it one game at a time, but as a pundit, as a fan, you want to look ahead to that matchup with the top two guys in the Heisman odds right now, Garrett Nussmeier and Lenore Sellers, and what that matchup could be like. And hopefully it's like a 3:30 ABC game as the game of the week, because I don't want a night game at Death Valley.
Yeah, if South Carolina's able to run the table to that point, that's going to be a top 7 matchup, maybe even better than that, depending on how some other things shake out. But yeah, I think from an offensive line standpoint, we'll see what this game 2 looks like, but you'll learn a little bit more about them from a Vanderbilt standpoint, because Vanderbilt does have a decent defensive line. Kentucky's got some guys, but once you get into the SEC schedule, we're going to start figuring it out. Virginia Tech's got some good guys on that defensive line. Kamari Copeland, I thought, was really disruptive, really good. But then at the same time, you're going to be seeing equal to better talent on the schedule moving forward there on the defensive fronts.
No doubt. So Lenore Sellers, I thought he was really good. So I asked Michael Sauls this, but Alex, do we even know what a catch is anymore? So you had LSU on Saturday night at Death Valley Junior. By the way, didn't Brian Kelly just absolutely pants Dabo Swinney when Swinney was talking about his grades? He said, see that we dominated them in the second half. Did he even watch the second half? Maybe he didn't want to watch the second half.
Yeah.
Right? So you had that touchdown pass and catch overturned when even the replay guy calls out his colleagues for blowing that call. That was clearly a touchdown. Okay. Then Nick Harbor, you have the same thing. Okay. He catches it 2 feet inbound, secures it. That's a football move, turns, goes to the ground. The guy rips the ball out, but you slow it down 10 times slower than slow motion. He never really lost control of the ball. The ball didn't hit the ground. But then you go back to South Carolina LSU last year. Kyron Lacey catches the ball. Same thing, 2 steps, goes out of bounds, and puts the ball down on the ground in one hand that pops out, and that's a catch.
Yeah.
A running back or a quarterback like Lenore Sellers, you run for the pylon. You touch the pylon, you get hit, the ball goes out of your hands in the end zone. It's still a touchdown because you broke the plane of the goal line with the football, and then you lose it. It doesn't matter. I mean, college football is really going down a very slippery slope with slowing these things down and overturning touchdowns, because Lenore Sellers, if you don't overturn that one, and Nick Harbor, Donovan Murphy, and Mazio Bennett don't drop passes, Nick Harbor is 16 for 19 for maybe 3 touchdowns, because I thought Donovan Murphy, if he caught that ball at midfield, they might not have caught him. Lenore Sellers could have been 16 for 19 for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards passing.
Yeah, with the whole catching the ball thing, like that's something that's not going to be figured out during the season. But this offseason, they've got to get something figured out with that, because there's just too many different interpretations of the rule. Like, it'd been different for Harbor's standpoint if he had just gotten 1 foot down, barely in bounds, and was going to the ground already. But he had gone up, caught that ball, taken, at least 2 steps in the end zone, and had firm possession of that ball, and then just went down to the ground, and the DB kind of got his hand in there really late and got the ball moving. I mean, that's, you can kind of see some of the national reaction to that too, is, people saying this should be a catch. So, but, kind of sticking to that point with Lenore Sellers, like, some of the national takes on him this off season has been, he needs to take a big step throwing the ball, things like that. Maybe some people saying he's just a runner. I mean, he showed for the most part on Sunday that he's not just a runner. Like, that throw to Nick Harbor was a really good throw on that touchdown that was overcalled. Like, Nick Harbor was the only person that could catch that ball on that route. The deep ball to Nick Harbor, that was a well-placed ball. He had a few there in that second quarter where he kind of overthrew Mazio Bennett, had a little bit of an overthrow to Brady Hunt. But once he settled down, he saw what he could do with his legs. And like some of those plays that he made where he's just tiptoeing down the sideline to get first downs are just difference makers in the game. And, Shane Beamer kind of talked about it yesterday. When things get into the fourth quarter and they need big plays, Sellers' competitiveness just kind of takes over games. The way he can avoid sacks, and I mean, Caleb Woodson's one of the best linebackers, in the ACC and probably in the country. And there were a couple of times he kind of shook him off and got first down. So Sellers had overall had a really good game. Took care of the ball. Had some pressure, in that game. Guys getting in there and took a couple sacks, but for the most part, I thought he was really good in the game.
Yeah, he was. 4 sacks for him. Gamecocks get 2 sacks. Speaking of linebackers, let's talk about that Gamecock defense and Fred J.R. Johnson. Co-SEC Defensive Player of the Week, 10 tackles, an interception. Got to go down in the end zone on that. That cost South Carolina 2 points, but it kept Virginia Tech from getting 7 points. Justin Okoronkwo, I thought, was outstanding. I thought he flashed more than Sean Murphy, who I thought was solid. But all 3 of those guys, just like what we thought, big, fast, athletic, and arrive with very bad intentions at the football.
Yeah, with one sample size so far, you can tell, from what we can tell from that game, like they haven't skipped a beat at linebacker from what they lost to where they are now. Fred Johnson, that dude can just get east to west in a hurry. And, once he gets east to west, he's going to hit you hard. But then showed the instincts on that interception, kind of a scramble drill type of play. He kind of, stuck to somebody there in the end zone and got that interception. Obviously, he needs to go down because that ended up hurting him, as you mentioned. But, I mean, he'll learn from that. That was his first start. Like, he'll learn from that. But, yeah, I thought one of the more positive things you saw from an overall defense perspective was Justin Okoronkwo. Like, I thought he was really solid in that game, had that really nice tackle where he used his speed to get past the wide receiver, whichever one it was out there, and pulled that running back down who had space if he would have gotten past Okoronkwo. I thought Sean Murphy had his moments too, but from a linebacker perspective, I think you had to really like what you saw from those guys. And then, I thought, one of the bright spots was defensive tackles were really solid in that game. Monkel Goodwin, I thought, really flashed in that game. He was really solid. Nick Barrett had some good moments, too, from a run stopping standpoint. Dylan Stewart did Dylan Stewart things. That's what you expect. But you saw some things from Brian Thomas in there. You saw some things from a JT Gear in there. And then you kind of talked about earlier from a secondary standpoint, some of those 50-50 balls went the other way. And they do need to get their head around and kind of make some plays on that. And Shane Beaver talked about that post-game. But you do have to give credit to Aiden Green and Donovan Green and Kyron Jones, because some of those balls that he just put right on the money. And, I mean, I think we talked about it with Donovan Green. Like, when that guy's healthy, he's really, really good receiver. And I think he was a little bit of a tough matchup at some points too. But they made plays when they needed to too at wide receiver. But at the same time, there are also some really good plays that Brandon Cisse, Bakari Swain, and those guys made too. So they'll kind of have to imagine Torian Graves making that a big emphasis this week. They get your head turned around and make some plays on the ball. But I thought overall defensively, Clayton White was really good again. Calling that defense. They kept Virginia Tech out of the end zone. That's kind of your number one rule on defense, is keep the team out of the end zone. If they did give up some yards, they on those big pass plays, they bounced right back and held them in check. So just overall, a really good defensive performance. And I think you kind of saw where some of those position groups who maybe had been a lot of talk about how are they going to replace what they lost last year. You can tell they kind of played with a chip on their shoulder, specifically with that defensive tackle spot. I really like what I saw from those interior guys.
So let's stick with that, because two guys you did not mention, the notorious GBD, Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy. I thought he was an impact player, and they put Troy Pikes in there. He switched his number to 33. He looked like a Tonka Hemingway.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is the guy they compared him to. Quick, twitch, explosive, powerful. Even Devontae Miles got in there. I mean, you played 5 defensive tackles, and Xavier Hardy was not one of them, and Christian Ingram was not one of them. 4 defensive ends. You played 3 linebackers, and then you played, after you Collier, Cisse started at corner. Then you played Miles Norwood. He played a lot of snaps. You played Bakari Swain. You played DeMarcus Leach. I think now Jalewis Solomon probably goes into that rotation with Collier out. But, I mean, you played 4 safeties. Cisse played corner and nickel. I mean, just tremendous depth on this Gamecock defense in the secondary. You're a 2 linebacker system. You played 3 guys, 5 defensive tackles, 4 defensive ends. I mean, tip of the hat, good recruiting, good player development, and great evaluations.
Yeah, we had kind of talked about the depth on this defense, and we were maybe a little bit concerned about certain spots, but I think you had some questions answered, specifically with that D tackle spot. Like 4 or 5 is kind of what the number they look for, and kind of you saw last year, and what you saw, Troy Pikes looks like a guy that he's going to give them a lot this year, but he looks like a guy that's going to be, when Travian Robertson kind of gets him in for a year 2 or year 3, he could be one of those next D tackle guys that you see in the draft for South Carolina. I was really impressed with him. Same with Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy too. He maybe statistically didn't have a game that you would think, but he was just very impactful. Like, he made clogging up holes and things like that. And then the secondary, the depth there, you saw it just from having to fill for Judge Carr. But you also saw the safeties like Peyton Williams and DQ Smith did kind of DQ Smith things. He was just solid overall. Peyton Williams, I thought wasn't surprising just because of how good he's been when his number's been called, but he was also had that interception, which was good to see for him. But you also saw David Busey get in there a little bit too. He did some things in it. There was one play where I think it was Kyron Jones had some opportunity to run. Had some green ahead of him, but David Busey kind of got off his block and made a tackle on Kyron Jones, which saved a lot of yards. So, all some good things from him. But you can really see the depth all over. Like, obviously, that edge spot from the depth standpoint, you're a little bit shaky for the injuries, but you still feel really good there about what they have taken the field.
Yeah, wouldn't you expect to see Clown South Carolina State?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to want to start to get, Clowney and then some of those freshman edges a lot more playing time against South Carolina State, just because now, maybe not giving you 15 snaps a game, but they're going to have to give you something. It feels like, if JT here, we don't know how long he's going to be out. Maybe it's just a week type of thing. But, they're going to have to give you something. So I think you're going to see a lot of rotation early on that. I don't think you want Brian Thomas and Dylan Stewart having to play that whole game against South Carolina State. So I think you're going to see a heavy rotation there and see some of those younger guys.
So what about Donovan Darden? Because I always thought he was an edge guy. They brought him in to play linebacker. He was one of the special teams players, scout team players of the week. He traveled with the team. Jaron Willis also could be a pass rush type of guy at 6'2", 254 pounds. Could we see some experimentation with those guys coming off the edge this week as well?
Yeah, that'd be interesting to watch. Jaron Willis would be the one that I would maybe keep an eye on there just because he's an older guy. At that, I think he could give them something immediately just because from a size perspective, I think he's ready to go. Like Darden, like if they want him to do more edge, they probably have to put on a little bit more weight to give them something right now. But like Jaron Willis, I think we talked about on here, like he gives you something in that 3.35 that you saw last year or 2 years ago. He can give you some there. So maybe they turn it in. Like I still think you're okay from that standpoint, but like one more goes down, that's when things are really getting shaky from a depth standpoint there.
All right, so last thing today, Alex, as we wrap it up. Obviously, Frank Beamer, longtime coach at Virginia Tech. Shane, his son, played for his dad. Torian Gray was his teammate at Virginia Tech. Shane Beamer, though, to me, I still think the biggest thing now in the era of the transfer portal is building a culture. And I really thought that's one of the biggest differences in the game because you see the freshmen, you see the transfers outside of Rodney Newsom really fit in well. Even guys we didn't expect, like DeMarcus Leach from Abbeville, right? He's just the latest guy with no other Power 4 offers to come in and play as a true freshman at South Carolina, just like Nick Evenmore, just like DQ Smith, just like Judge Collier. Now it's him. Chris Hatfield could be a guy like that as well. But the culture, the ability to evaluate and develop players, I mean, that's really the main thing, I think, in college football now. And I think that really is paying huge dividends for Shane Beamer now in year 5 of the Beamer era. We're already here.
Yeah, and that's something that takes a few years. That's not a come in a year 1 or year 2 and that's immediately there. Like that stuff takes a few years because you got to develop those players that you get in early. You got to develop those high school coaching relationships. They'll find those types of guys that they're finding. I mean, you're seeing it in this last class. You're seeing it in this class now. I mean, Tristan Lewis is a guy that not on the radar of many people. Cassie Barnes is on the radar of a lot of people now, but he's a guy that they got on really early. So it's just something where they've really kind of hit their stride there. I think you saw that. You saw it last year in a lot of the younger guys who are really kind of making big impacts now from that they maybe found as under the radar type of prospects. But they're really hitting their stride now with that. I think they've got a great preparation there going from a evaluation type of standpoint there. But not only are they hitting on those guys, but from a recruiting standpoint, they're starting to hit on some of those top guys. And Darius Gray is a guy that everybody wanted in the country, couldn't run anywhere. They're really starting to hit on those highly ranked guys, and you can really start to mix in when you get in those types of guys, and then also some of those in-state guys that they really can able to identify early, and even around the country they've been able to get on early and develop and have been ready to go in year 2 or year 3.
All right, so speaking of in-state guys, Alex, I want to ask you about 2 committed players. And that is Rock Hill safety Tamari Watkins and Dutch Fork defensive end Julian Walker. Jamil Walker on the sidelines with the defensive lineman. I'm hearing some whispers on these guys. And let's speak to the fact that FSU invited Amari Thomas to the Alabama game, and he did not go. Let's wrap it up with those three guys. And personally, I feel South Carolina will flip Tamari Watkins. I don't know on Julian Walker, but certainly that door has not been closed. And Hale McGranahan last week, I wasn't even going to talk about him, and he said, hey, that door is not closed. And after seeing Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas Jr. and JT Gear, who, by the way, this is their last year, there's a spot open for a guy like Julian Walker to come in and be the next Dylan Stewart.
Yeah, it's now that they're getting into their home slate of games, it's going to be interesting to see who kind of pops up on the visitors list. Maybe this week, maybe in future weeks. But with those two guys specifically, they're going to stay on those guys just because with Watkins committed to Texas A&M, that's a long way from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and then Julian Walker being so close and having his dad on staff in Michigan. That's a long way from Columbia, South Carolina. I know he's not wasn't originally from Columbia, South Carolina, but he's right there and can visit pretty much at any time. So it's going to be really interesting to see with those two guys. I think they're still fighting for those guys. And with Amari Thomas too, I think that was probably big for him not to go to Tallahassee on Saturday just because it looked like a pretty good atmosphere there and obviously a big win for FSU. So yeah, I think that was a really good sign for South Carolina and their continued chances to get him signed.
No doubt. So Casey, I don't know why you think we're going to let go of Beamer. I've never been for letting go of Beamer. Maybe you have him confused with Lonnie Teasley, but Shane Beamer's going nowhere. South Carolina in the top 10 for the first time since the preseason poll of 2014 now in the AP poll. And, Alex, I did want to mention this. It's the first time Florida State, and Miami have been in the top 15 since 2006. I don't expect that to last for the Gators. And then Alabama. We could be witnessing the death of a dynasty out of the AP top 20 for the first time since the preseason poll of 2008 after Saban's first year, when they went 6-6, and went to a bowl game. That's the year South Carolina got left out of the bowl games. But certainly the Gamecocks already being in the top 12, if you keep winning, you beat State, you beat Vanderbilt, then you go to Columbia, Missouri. If you win that one and come home and beat Kentucky, South Carolina, LSU, that could be a top 6 matchup at that point.
Yeah, it's really intriguing to see what they can do just because I think you like their opportunities leading into that LSU game. Obviously, I think Missouri, Vanderbilt. I'm interested to watch Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech this weekend just because there's going to be that comparison from a film standpoint. But that's a huge game for Brent Pry, Virginia Tech, and they're going to probably go all out in that game. Then just kind of specifically with Alabama, I think there was a case they could have been dropped out of the top 25 completely this week just because against FSU, they just it didn't look too competitive, to be honest. Defensively, I had some questions about their defense going into the season. They didn't answer much defensively for me in that game. Thomas Castellanos was all over the place, running all over. I think there's still some questions about Ty Simpson at quarterback. They got some guys in Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and those guys, and they need Jam Miller back pretty soon. I don't know how quickly he's going to be back, but there's a lot of questions. I think that it's starting to get really kind of tense there in Tuscaloosa.
No doubt. Alex, great stuff. As always, thanks for your contributions to the show. Have a good week. It should hopefully get to see a lot of players this week, and hopefully Lenoris doesn't have to play past maybe the middle of the second quarter. We can get Luke Doty, and maybe there's an Air Noland or Cutter Woods sighting. and watch a bunch of guys play football for the Gamecocks this weekend. Be well, my friend, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Thanks for having me on. See you next time.
All right. All right, that'll do it for another Gamecock Pod Live. I think Casey may be a Clemson fan. Well, Virginia Tech, basically South Carolina gave South Carolina fits with the bad offensive line play, but Virginia Tech never got in the end zone. And Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, and Bakari Swain happened, and so did J.R. Johnson. So that'll do it for me. We'll be back on Thursday and Friday on Gamecock Pod Daily. Thanks to all of you watching live and listening to this later, wherever you get your podcast. Until next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, Keith Allsep saying, go Gamecocks, God bless, and be well, Gamecock Nation. I'm out of here.